Okay guys, so we're going to start here by looking at example 3. You can do one of two things. You can try it on there is a 2 attached. Factor it out. Set of parentheses in there. X, if you're not started with 2 want to have a number underneath. At all. Okay, A is times by. Think about it. If you're dividing on the inside, first of all, if it's on the inside, it's horizontal. It's stuff horizontal. It's going to be opposite in operation. So x plus pi over 8. There's no number on the outside. There's no k value here. A is 1/2. So 2 pi times 1/2 is pi. If you think about it, you're taking all of the x values and multiplying them by 1/2. They're getting smaller, so it's in radians. So I know that a sine graph goes out to 2 pi, and then I like to just cut it in half. And graphs, we're always going to apply that scale change rule first. I'm going to write it up here again. And this says that I have to take all of my x's and multiply them by 1/2. I'm going to leave my y's alone. So the y-axis, I'm still going up to 1 and down to -1. But my x-axis changes. So still going up to 1 and down to -1. But instead of completing a cycle at 2 pi, I'm now going to complete a cycle at pi, because 2 pi times 1/2 is pi. And let's go to this halfway point. Pi times 1/2 is pi over 2. And pi over 2 times 1/2 is pi over 4. And 3 pi over 2 times 1/2 is 3 pi over 4. So it's a little crowded. And then 0, 0 still is 0, 0. Pi over 2, 1 is now at pi over 4, 1. Pi, comma 0 is now at pi over 2, comma 0. 3 pi over 2, comma -1 is 3 pi over 4, comma -1. And 2 pi, comma 0 is now pi, comma 0. So it's not my final graph, but that's my in-between. So it's kind of cool. You can see that you've taken this wave, shape, and it's kind of like a slinky, like you've taken it and you've pushed it together. We used to complete a full cycle in 2 pi radians, and now it's pi radians. That horizontal distance to complete the cycle is pi radians. Now, step 3 is to then apply your translation. And our translation rule said that we were going to move everything to the right pi over 8, but we weren't going to move anything up or down. When we apply this translation rule, only the x-axis is going to change. We're still going up to 1 and -1. Now sometimes, with fractions here, it can get a little tricky. This point at 0, 0, I'm going to move it over. It's going to be at pi pi over 8, 0. This point at pi over 4, when I move it over pi over 8, so you're essentially taking pi over 4 and you're adding pi over 8 to it. Well, I need a common denominator, so that becomes 2 pi over 8. And I add pi over 8, and I get to 3 pi over 8. All right, the y value of 1 is the same. This was at pi over 2. Think of the pi over 2 as a 4 pi over 8, so that when I add pi over 8, we're at 5 pi over 8. It used to be at 3 pi over 4. When I add pi over 8 to that, think of the 3 pi over 4 as a 6 pi over 8. When I add pi over 8, I'm at 7 pi over 8, and that's down here at negative 1. It used to be at pi. Think of pi as an 8 pi over 8. When I add pi over 8, I'm at 9 pi over 8. So, connect, 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 and we have our graph. There she is.